In June of 2013, Shaun White had just won the Elite 11 MVP and was on top of the world. Fast forward 4 years and he was getting dismissed from the Auburn football team after being booked in jail. Those 4 years were a crucial time in Shaun's life, and due to some injuries and bad decisions, he was not able to reach the potential that so many people saw in him. As a quarterback in the SEC West, he did not have the easiest job in the world, but he was definitely capable of accomplishing more than what he ended up accomplishing. So in this video, we will go through those 4 years and try and find out what exactly went wrong for him and the obstacles that he had to go through. So let's get into it. So from my perspective alone, and the way that I remember Shaun White was just as an average quarterback that played for Auburn in the mid-2010s and not much more than that. So when I found out how highly recruited he was, it kind of shocked me. For his first 3 years of high school, he attended Chaminade-Madonna College Preparatory School in Hollywood, Florida, but then he transferred to University Nova South in Fort Lauderdale for his final year of high school. Now, probably a very good reason for that transfer is because the summer going into his senior year, he attended that Elite 11 camp and won the Elite 11 MVP that I mentioned earlier. So after that, he probably gained a good amount of recognition and most likely was recruited by surrounding high schools with a more competitive schedule. So I'm not sure if that was the case with University Nova South, but he ended up there for his final year of high school. In his 1 year at the school, he threw for 2,679 yards and 30 touchdowns, which won him first team All-County honors and earned him an invite to the Under Armour All-American game. In that game, he threw for just over 150 yards and a touchdown, which was a good enough performance to win him the game's MVP. So after 4 years in high school, Shaun had thrown for over 8,000 yards and over 100 touchdowns. Along with this, he had an Elite 11 MVP and an Under Armour All-American MVP to his name. That's a pretty great resume, but even with that, Shaun was only ranked as a 4-star recruit and the 91st player nationally, which to me is sort of low. I feel like a quarterback with the achievements that he had would be a little higher than that, but that's just me. Regardless of how he got his ranking, he committed to Auburn University. In 2014, he redshirted and didn't play in any games. In 2015, he played in a couple games, but it was kind of a weird season for him and Auburn. The starting quarterback going into the season, and one who had a good amount of hype surrounding him, was Jeremy Johnson. Jeremy Johnson had crazy size as he stood 6'5", 230. He was going into his junior year and was viewed by a lot of people as a very serious Heisman candidate. However, as the 2015 season started, it became very clear very quickly that Jeremy Johnson was nowhere near a Heisman level player. I actually remember one moment that I realized Jeremy Johnson was not worth the hype he had received, which was one of the first plays, if not the first play, against LSU, which was in week 3 of that season. He received the snap, and in his back throw, he literally just fumbled the ball. No one hit the ball, no one poked it. He literally just, in his back throw, just threw the ball. It was like the Jameis Winston fumble against Oregon in that 2014 college football playoff game, but he didn't fall down. He kind of just threw the ball. So I'm not sure if it was that specific moment, but it was in that game that Jeremy was benched and Shaun White got his first shot. So Shaun had now received a great opportunity to show what he was made of, but unfortunately he could not perform at the level that the coaches were looking for. He was doing fine, but I think that the coaches were not exactly sold on him. He started in week 4 after that game against LSU, and then started in every game until week 9. In week 9, they decided to start Jeremy Johnson for some reason. Some people will say it was because Shaun White was not meeting expectations, which could be the reason, but what I think the reason was that they really wanted Jeremy Johnson to be good because they had seen his potential. And although he performed terribly earlier in the season, they knew what he was capable of, so I guess they decided that week 9 would be a good chance to give him another shot. Apparently, he performed well enough to start for the rest of the season until the bowl game. So I go through all of that to kind of paint the picture that the problem for Auburn during this season was finding a consistently high-performing quarterback. The fact that Jeremy Johnson and Shaun White had practically the same stats at the end of the year tell you that the coaching staff was not completely sold on either of them throughout the entire season. So Shaun actually started in the final game of the year, which was the Birmingham Bowl, after not starting since week 8, but sadly struggled mightily as he finished the game with just over 100 yards with 0 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Not a great way to finish off his first real season in Auburn, but he still had time to prove himself because he was just a redshirt freshman that year. He ended the season with 1,166 yards with just 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions. A pretty tough year for the dude, but to give him the benefit of the doubt for some of it, he was splitting time with Jeremy Johnson the whole season and probably did not get the number of opportunities he needed to prove himself, and the team as a whole just had a weird and underwhelming season. But like I said, he still had time to grow. Moving on to the 2016 season, it was a much bigger and better opportunity for Sean to prove himself, but again, sadly, he could just not perform at that level that everyone was looking for. And frankly, it wasn't even about not producing at a level that everyone was looking for, but he was not producing at a level that a quarterback in the SEC West should perform at. But after a very disappointing season from Jeremy Johnson the year prior, Auburn probably felt that it was time to just give anyone a shot at this point. Sean played in 11 games that season, with 10 of those being starts, so he was the main guy for Auburn that season, but like I said, the numbers just did not translate. Thankfully, the pressure was not all on Shaun White because the Tigers had 2 great running backs that year in Cameron Petway and Kerryon Johnson, who combined for over 2,000 rushing yards on the year and really took on the identity of this Auburn team, and more specifically, the Auburn offense. The team did improve from the previous season, since in 2015 they finished the year with a 6-6 record, but improved to 8-5 this year. Sean ended the season with 1,679 yards, with 9 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. Not great numbers, but he did lead the SEC in completion percentage and was 4th in the conference passing efficiency. Plus, like I mentioned, the majority production came from the rushing game. At the end of the season, they played Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl, and unfortunately, Sean suffered a broken arm in that game, which is so stupid because, it was the bowl game, it didn't mean anything, and more importantly, unbeknownst to Sean at that moment, that would be his last college football game ever. Going into the 2017 season, he was slightly hindered by that broken arm injury, but was still able to participate in non-contact drills and stuff. However, that seemed to not matter much when Jarrett Stidham decided to transfer from Baylor and took the starting job away from Sean. Then, at the beginning of the 2017 season, Sean and 2 other players were suspended for the season opener against Georgia Southern for reasons unknown to us. But the final straw came in September of that year when he was dismissed from the team by Gus Malzahn after being arrested for public intoxication. When you think of that being the reason he got arrested, it might be kind of strange at first. I mean, there are a lot of people who become intoxicated in public, so I feel that Sean had to be causing some sort of disturbance to get arrested, but the articles that I read did not mention anything like that. What they did mention was the location of the arrest, which was right outside of the police department, and the time of the arrest, which was around 3 in the morning. So my theory is not so much that he was causing a big disturbance, but rather in some way or another, he was very noticeably intoxicated, and the fact that it was the time it was probably did not make him look any better. So I'm not sure if they left out any other details, but all we have is that he was intoxicated in public. He was released the next day, but when he returned to Auburn, he had been dismissed from the team. Despite receiving a good amount of offers from other teams, however, he decided to retire from the game. That right there tells me that he was pretty much done with football at that point and did not face the game with the motivation and passion that he once did. So although him getting arrested and dismissed from the team is almost entirely viewed as a negative thing, it's probably good that he did not take the field for Auburn if he didn't care as much as he should have. After football, he earned a finance degree from FIU, and he currently resides in Boston, Massachusetts. So in conclusion, it's unfortunate to see that Sean cannot get the most out of his career, but he's in a big group of guys that came into college as the man and had their ultimate fall from glory. The good thing is that Sean is not just a football player, and there are other paths and careers that he is able to be successful in. I'm not sure what he did with his finance degree, but my assumption is that he was somewhat successful, and if he's happy, that's all that matters. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like and share the video, as that helps the channel to grow. Besides that, until next time.